Most women are taught that if they just love harder, give more, and forgive endlessly, they will finally be valued. But what if that teaching is a lie? What if the more you bend, the less you are seen? What if being endlessly available is not the road to devotion, but the trap that breeds indifference? The uncomfortable truth is this: people often respect boundaries far more than sacrifices. Imagine this: you pour your energy into someone who rarely acknowledges your worth. You give time, attention, and care, only to find their responses half-hearted, distracted, or dismissive. The human psyche, ruled by unconscious archetypes, does not honor what comes too easily. In Jung's vision of the shadow, we see that human beings instinctively project their inner chaos onto the ones they believe will endure it. If you always stay, they unconsciously sense that they can devalue you without consequence. Here lies the paradox. Value is rarely created by giving everything. It is crystallized by holding back enough to protect your essence. Seneca once wrote that what is rare becomes precious, while abundance without limit leads to contempt. A woman who scatters her light without measure becomes like the sun at noon, so bright, yet so ignored because it is always there. But the rare glimpse of a sunrise or sunset awakens awe. Do you see? The scarcity of your presence, when chosen wisely, commands reverence. There is a wound many women carry from childhood, the belief that love must be earned by pleasing others. This wound makes them overextend, tolerate neglect, and cling to crumbs of affection. But beneath this compulsion lies the shadow of abandonment, an inner child terrified of rejection, who whispers that survival depends on being chosen. Jung would call this a complex, a knot of memory and emotion lodged deep in the psyche, replaying itself endlessly until confronted. And unless this pattern is shattered, you will remain magnetized to those who cannot or will not value you. To deal with people who do not value you, you must first recognize that their blindness is not your truth. Their inability to see your worth is a mirror of their own unresolved shadows, not a verdict on your soul. A man who has not made peace with his own anima will dismiss the feminine, because to embrace her would mean facing his vulnerability. A friend who cannot honor your boundaries reveals not your weakness, but their fear of control slipping away. By seeing through this projection, you step out of the role of victim and into the realm of sovereign choice. But make no mistake, this awakening demands toughness. To distance yourself from those who undervalue you is not an act of cruelty, but an act of self-respect. It is a declaration that your soul is not a bargaining chip. Think of the Stoics who counseled detachment, not from love itself, but from the illusion that love must be begged for. Marcus Aurelius warned that we degrade ourselves when we beg for what should be freely given. The empowered woman understands this truth. You do not chase validation, you embody worth. And yet, there will be tension. The moment you withdraw your energy, those accustomed to your giving will feel threatened. They may accuse you of being cold, selfish, or distant. But understand, these are not cries of truth, but echoes of their dependence. Just as a child rages when the mother withholds a sweet, so too will people rage when denied your endless availability. Hold steady. The storm of protest is proof that you have disrupted the old dynamic, the script where you were cast as the ever-giving, ever-forgiving. Transformation begins with silence. Not silence as passivity, but silence as power, the refusal to explain yourself endlessly to those who refuse to listen. Silence that draws a line, that makes others confront their own behavior in the mirror of your absence. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when we stop giving power to things outside ourselves. The empowered woman practices this by refusing to waste her voice on ears that will not hear. Her silence is not weakness. It is the roar of unseen strength. The first method, then, is withdrawal of energy, not as punishment, but as recalibration. You do not fight for scraps. You preserve your table for those who can sit with respect. This is not a game of manipulation, but of truth. People either step up to meet your value, or they drift away into the background where they belong. You are not left empty by their absence. You are freed to make space for those who will recognize the rare light you carry. In this act, individuation takes root. Jung spoke of individuation as the integration of one's true self beyond the masks demanded by society. To value yourself even when others do not is to begin this sacred path. It is to declare that your being has weight, your boundaries have meaning, and your worth is non-negotiable. And once you begin, others will feel it. They may resist, they may rebel, but deep within they will know. This is a woman who cannot be devalued without consequence. The second method is the act of redefining boundaries, a gesture that at first feels unnatural for the woman who has been conditioned to please. Boundaries are not walls meant to shut the world out, but thresholds that protect the sacred. Jung himself described individuation as a process of becoming distinct without severing connection. Boundaries serve this exact purpose. They announce where you end and another begins. Without them, your identity dissolves into the needs of others, leaving you hollow and resentful. With them, you reclaim the right to exist as a whole being rather than a tool for someone else's convenience. Picture the woman who says yes when her soul cries no. Every agreement cuts her a little thinner until her essence is transparent, almost invisible. People who do not value her grow accustomed to her acquiescence. They take without pause, because she has taught them there will be no resistance. Yet, when she dares to draw a line to say, "This is where I stand, and I will not move," she shocks them awake. The ground shifts. What was once taken for granted now carries weight. Her no, spoken clearly, becomes a revelation. This is not easy. Boundaries provoke discomfort in those who benefit from your silence. They may try to guilt you, saying you've changed or that you've grown cold. But in truth, you are not becoming cold, you are becoming defined. A river without banks spills into a swamp. A river with banks has force, direction, and depth. When you set boundaries, you do not diminish love. You purify it. You stop it from leaking into places it does not belong, so that it may flow stronger where it matters. Boundaries also unmask the true intentions of others. Those who respect them reveal themselves as capable of real intimacy, for respect is the root of love. Those who violate them expose the hollowness of their regard. A woman who learns this lesson no longer wastes energy deciphering mixed signals. She watches behavior, not words. She knows that a man who repeatedly ignores her boundaries is not a partner, but a taker. And she understands that to enforce her limits is not cruelty, is the highest form of self-respect. The third method is detachment from outcome, a wisdom the Stoics placed at the heart of peace. People who do not value you often thrive on your reaction, on the way your worth bends itself around their indifference. They test your patience, not always with malice, but with unconscious hunger for control. Yet when you detach from their response, you step into sovereignty. You cease to hinge your identity on whether they approve, return affection, or finally recognize your value. Like Epictetus counseled, you focus not on what you cannot control, but on the mastery of your own mind and choices. Detachment is not apathy. It is the art of caring deeply without chaining your soul to outcomes beyond your command. Imagine gazing into a mirror that once distorted your reflection. For years you tried to adjust yourself, twisting to fit what it showed. But one day you realize the mirror is cracked, incapable of reflecting you truthfully. Do you break yourself further, or do you step back and see the truth? That your image was never the problem, the mirror was. This is detachment. To stop trying to fix the distorted reflection, and instead walk away to find a clearer glass. When a woman detaches from the craving to be valued by those who cannot see her, she becomes luminous. She is no longer ensnared by the game of proving herself. She radiates an energy of calm indifference that paradoxically makes her more magnetic. For nothing commands attention like the presence of someone who does not need it. Men sense it, friends sense it, even strangers sense it. She has stepped into a field of her own, untouchable by desperation, and it unsettles those who once fed on her insecurity, for they cannot pull her back into their orbit. This transformation often evokes resistance within. The inner child longs for validation, for the soothing balm of being chosen. But individuation demands you soothe that child yourself. You become both mother and father to your own psyche, whispering, "You are enough, even if no one applauds." By doing so, you sever the ancient pattern of seeking worth in those who diminish you. This is the deepest form of freedom, to value yourself even in the face of disregard. Notice how all three methods, withdrawal of energy, redefining boundaries, and detachment from outcome, are not acts of aggression, but acts of reclamation. They shift the energy from the other back to you, where it always belonged. You cease begging for crumbs, and instead set a table only those worthy may enter. You stop chasing the echo of recognition, and instead anchor into the truth of your existence. And from that stillness, from that clarity, you begin to see the next steps with unshakable eyes. The woman who learns these lessons does not merely survive neglect, she transmutes it. She alchemizes disregard into self-mastery, rejection into revelation. Every no from another becomes an invitation to say yes to herself. And as she walks this path, those around her begin to sense that she is no longer playing by their rules. She is rewriting the script. She is no longer a participant in her own devaluation. She is the author of her worth. The fourth method is the mastery of emotional restraint, the art of refusing to pour your deepest feelings into hands that cannot hold them. Many women believe that vulnerability means unveiling every wound to anyone who asks. But true vulnerability is sacred, selective, and guarded like a flame in the wind. When you reveal your soul to those who cannot cherish it, you do not gain closeness, you scatter pearls before the indifferent. Jung's archetype of the wise woman whispers this truth. Not everyone is a vessel strong enough to carry the weight of your inner world. To hold back is not coldness, but discernment. Imagine a queen seated on her throne. Does she weep before every guest who enters her court? Does she confess her fears to the jester, her longings to the wandering merchant, her heartache to the one who barely bows? No. She waits for those rare souls who approach with reverence, patience, and loyalty. Only then does she unveil the softer chambers of her heart. This is not arrogance, but sovereignty, the ability to distinguish between the curious and the committed, the passerby and the partner. Emotional restraint creates gravity. When you do not spill your every thought, people lean in, hungry to know more. Silence becomes an aura, mystery becomes a lure. But more than that, restraint protects your psyche from the trauma of repeated dismissal. Every time you overshare with someone who undervalues you, you reopen old wounds. Every time you measure your worth by their reaction, you deepen the grooves of abandonment within. To practice restraint is to say, my soul is not a stage for careless audiences. My truth is art, and only those prepared to honor it may witness the masterpiece. The fifth method is transmutation of pain into growth. Too often, women absorb neglect as evidence of their inadequacy. They tell themselves, if I were more beautiful, more patient, more giving, I would be valued. This is the lie of the shadow, the cruel whisper of unhealed wounds. But individuation calls for a different response, to use neglect as fuel for transformation, to allow pain to sharpen discernment rather than corrode self. The Stoics taught that suffering becomes bearable when we give it meaning. The empowered woman does not waste rejection, she refines herself with it. Picture iron in the fire. At first, the heat feels unbearable, threatening to destroy its shape. Yet, under the hand of the blacksmith, that same fire molds the iron into a weapon, a tool, or a work of beauty. So it is with disregard. It burns, yes, it stings, but when faced consciously, it reveals where your old patterns lived unchecked. It shows you where you gave too much, where you silenced your boundaries, where you feared abandonment more than you honored your truth. Pain becomes the teacher, not the enemy. Neglect becomes the forge, not the grave. This alchemy is not about pretending. Neglect does not hurt. It is about feeling the ache fully, then asking, what in me allowed this? Where did I surrender my crown? For a fleeting smile, in this questioning lies the seed of evolution. Jung wrote that what remains unconscious returns as fate until we make the unseen visible. We repeat the same wounds. But once you name the pattern, you loosen its grip. Once you see the old story clearly, you can write a new one, where your worth is not on trial. The sixth and final method is the cultivation of inner abundance. People who do not value you often exploit the emptiness within the hunger for attention, affirmation, and love. When you fill that emptiness with your own rituals of self-regard, you become untouchable. No longer starving, you stop settling for crumbs. The Stoics called this autarkia, self-sufficiency, the state of being whole within yourself. It does not mean isolation. It means you enter relationships as a full vessel, not as a beggar with an empty bowl. Think of the garden that thrives without applause. The rose does not ask the passerby to declare her beautiful. She blooms regardless, fragrant and fierce. So must you cultivate your garden of self-worth through daily practices. Passions, friendships that uplift, solitude that restores. When your inner life is rich, neglect loses its sting. Their failure to value you no longer defines you, for you are already rooted in abundance. From this soil, love flows outward as a choice, never as desperation. These 6 methods together: withdrawal of energy, redefining boundaries, detachment from outcome, emotional restraint, transmutation of pain, and cultivation of inner abundance form the architecture of sovereignty. They are not quick fixes or shallow strategies, but lifelong practices that reshape the psyche. Each demands courage, for each will strip away illusions you once clung to. But each also grants freedom, the kind no external validation can offer, and when you embody them, something extraordinary happens. You stop being magnetized to those who undervalue you. You stop shrinking, begging, and bending. You rise. You command a presence that others cannot easily dismiss, for your very energy whispers, I am whole, I am rare, and I am not afraid to walk alone. Those who cannot value you fall away, and those who can step forward, drawn not by need, but by reverence. The woman who learns to deal with neglect does not harden into bitterness, she awakens into power. She understands that value begins within, and that only those who echo it outward deserve a seat at her table. She is no longer caged by rejection, she is crowned by self-respect. And in that crowning, she finds the ultimate truth. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.